It's one thing to read stories about the Detroit Walk to Freedom in 1963.
The sun was shining. It was a beautiful day, not a cloud in the sky.
It's another to hear the stories firsthand from the people who were there, including then 12-year-old Reverend Nicholas Hood III.
I was just a 12-year-old. I was just there with my friends. If you looked at that picture, we're holding hands and we're singing songs. Songs of freedom, songs of justice, songs of equality.
Dorothy Dewberry Aldrich was 22 years old and already very much involved in the civil rights movement.
That's my dad.
Reverend Horace Sheffield III was only 8, but wise beyond his years with a father involved in the movement.
I remember, hearing Dr. King deliver the I Have a Dream speech here first. Of course, he tuned it up later, and I remember the impact and effect that it had on me.
The Detroit Walk to Freedom was held on June 23, 1963, which marked the 20th anniversary of the 1943 Detroit race riot that was sparked by a fight between white and black youth on Belle Isle. The Walk to Freedom set out to be a call for change. Black Americans faced discrimination not only in the South, but also in the urban North, including Detroit.
Everyone knew we had serious things to address, and the issues of the day at that time was housing, schools, and of course, jobs, and always police harassment.
I personally was never beaten by the police, but I knew people who had been.
In the weeks leading up to the march, many, including some black Detroiters, believed it wasn't the right move. Sheffield's father, who was involved in the labor movement, along with Hood's father, pressed on.
One of the things my dad told me about the march was that very few pastors and churches were supporting the march before the march. But in the days, the weeks leading up to the march, 60 years ago, it became apparent that the march was going to be really successful. And not just successful, but important in a way where pastors and other churches would want to be a part of it. And so it grew in steam.
To about 125,000 people on the day of the march. But to those who were there, it felt much bigger.
African Americans made up about 30 to 40% of the population, and honest goodness, half of them were in the street on Woodward. So that was really gratifying that our people turned out like that.
So this is where you started, right?
We started right here. This is Alexandrine and Woodward. And our church lined up here, and we waited till the marshals, were on the street. They beckoned us to come in.
They made their way down Woodward to what was then Cobo Arena. Only about 20,000 people could fit inside to hear Dr. King's powerful speech. Others listened from outside.
Segregation is wrong because it is nothing but a new form of slavery covered up with certain niceties of complexity.
Before his I Have a Dream speech at the March on Washington later that summer, he mesmerized Detroiters with a preview.
The only part I remember is really, I have a dream that one day we will all be free. But other than that, again, I had the sensibilities of a 12-year-old. I was just out there goofing off with my friends.
I really believe that I was called to ministry, witnessing him preach and speak during his time here in Detroit.
The walls of Sheffield's office at the Detroit Association of Black Organizations hold evidence of how the Walk to Freedom put him on a path of activism and service.
The only reason I get up and come over to the Detroit Association of Black Organizations every day and fight to try to make life better for whoever I can is because I've been touched by the sacrifice of others.
Dewberry Aldrich and Hood also remain active in the community.
Dr. King said it, if we don't resolve the issues of the day, we are going to perish together as fools.
For people like myself, where I pastor a church, the struggle is how do pastors today, How do the people today articulate the problems of today, the challenges of today?
Dewberry Aldrich isn't wallowing in disappointment at the slow pace of change or the setbacks over the past 60 years. She says neither should anyone else who cares about civil rights.
Get involved. Love your community. It's always something to do. It's everybody's fight.